Here are our keywords we're going to be using in this lesson. Let's have a look at a recap of sorting algorithms. Now remember, sorting algorithms are used to sort data in a certain way. We're thinking about using lists and arrays to do this. There are some standard algorithms that have developed and each has their own methods. Have a look at this sorting algorithm. You've got 3 questions on this slide that I want you to try and answer. Number 1, identify the name of the sorting algorithm. Number 2, what are the characteristics? And number 3, would this algorithm work or not? Please pause the video and complete this now. So hopefully you figured out that this is a bubble sort. We've got an array at the top and you can see the comparison of the different values. So in the if statement you're comparing the value within the array numbers I to the value 1 plus to numbers I. Then you're going to swap those values if one is larger than the other. Remember, it keeps making passes through this algorithm until it reaches the end. Now this algorithm wouldn't work properly because it's only doing one pass. Remember, a sorted algorithm is where all the numbers are sorted in ascending or descending order. You've also got an issue here. The issue is that this algorithm is not going to work. It's going to keep going, and when it gets to the last value, which is 1 in this case, the if statement is going to cause it to crash. That's because there isn't a value I plus 1. So we need to think about our for loop here and how we would edit that. Have a think about how you would edit it, pause the video and try and add that. Well, it's actually quite simple. When we're using our range, we've got len of numbers, and we'd do len of numbers minus 1. So we'd never go to that last item, because we only ever check the last 2, so we only need to go to 9. Here's the specification, and you can see we're currently on algorithms part F. Standard algorithms, and we're looking at these sorts, the first one being the bubble sort. So for the exam, remember, you need to be able to criticise an algorithm. How can we improve it? You need to be able to create a bubble sort which can work on any data set, and you need to conclude the suitability of a bubble sort algorithm. First of all, let's have a reminder about what a bubble sort is. Please watch this video. The characteristics are it makes comparisons between pairs of adjacent items. Any items that are found in the wrong order are exchanged. It keeps doing this until the data is sorted, making passes through the data. Shortly you're going to be creating your own bubble sort, but I want you now to write out the steps you think you're going to need when creating your bubble sort. I've started you off with creating an array. You might need to create some variables, and I also want you to plan out your variables. So let's think about what's going to be included. Well, first of all, we need an array. We're then going to have to know the length of the array. We need to know how many items are in that array. You're going to need 2 pointers, a current value and a current value plus 1, with some form of if selection statement. If the current value is less than the value at current value plus 1, we'll do nothing, otherwise we're going to swap. You're going to need a loop which is going to move through the arrays, so moving the current value and current value plus 1 along. Remember, the last 2 items is where your array should finish. So in this example, the 8 and the 6, the last 2. So our current value plus 1 should be, the last one it should reach is 6, and our current value, the last one it should reach is 8. If it goes past this, the array is going to overflow. So we need some kind of loop to do this. Now we know how many swaps there are likely to be because we know the length of the array. So in that case, we should be using a for loop. Now, if we think about it, once we've done that, we're also going to have to then do the swapping. We're going to need a temporary variable which is going to temporarily store the value which is being overwritten. So in this example we've got a 9 and a 4. We move the 4 into the temporary store and copy the value from position 1, remember 0 is the first position, to position 2. So we have 2 copies of 9. We're then going to overwrite the first value of 9 with 4. However, at this point the algorithm is not completed because we need to keep running passes until they are all in order. So we're going to need some kind of loop. Now there are 2 choices for this, a definite and an indefinite loop. We actually don't know how many passes there are going to be. So actually we should use an indefinite loop, which is a while loop. However, lots of people choose to use for loops for this, to do so many passes. Now when you go away to actually make your bubble sort, you're going to go through different stages, as we've already planned them out and you've seen. Don't just jump in and do the whole thing first. This is what I did. I made a list to start with. I identified the variables I'd need. So you can see in this piece of code, I've got swaps equals true, number of swaps equals 0, and the length of the data array. Now, I've put swaps equal true because I've been starting to think ahead of whether there are any swaps or not. So when there are no swaps, we know it is sorted. I'm going to try it first. So I've created a for loop, and I wanted just to create a for loop just to print all the items in the array. So I've done for current value in numbers, print current values. Can you see any problems here? So as you should have figured out, actually when I made this, it wasn't quite working. So first of all, I tried to just get it printing, didn't I? And I'd said if current value was greater than that current value plus 1. Well, would this code work? And why not? If the current value is 1, then current value plus 1 would just be 2. And the next value would be 3. And then the next value would be 4. It wouldn't go 1, 4, 1, 2, 46, etc. Why do you think that is? Now the reason for that is because current value is just a variable which is going to iterate. It's going to iterate the number of items that are in numbers, the array. So it's just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 until it's gone through every item. So I've fixed that. So I've changed it to print numbers current value. So actually printing out the correct values there just to check that's working. But now it's crashing and I don't understand why. Why do you think that is? Okay, have a look at the for loop. The for loop I chose was just moving through the array. And remember, when I get to the end of the array, if it looks for a value plus 1, it's going to crash. So my if statement is not going to work. So I need to change that. I need to change the structure of my for loop. And I've changed that to a value, current value, in range. That's going to allow me to loop through those values. So now that was working, I decided the next thing I was going to do was actually to do the swaps. I created a temporary variable and then I actually did the swaps and printed it out just to check it was working. And one pass was working. So then you can actually think about doing different passes. And I, as I said earlier, have decided to use a while loop. Now we don't know the number of swaps and the number of passes it's going to make, so I've chosen this while loop. I've had this variable called swaps, and I originally had one called number underscore swaps, which I didn't actually need. I duplicated that twice, so I removed that variable and just used swaps. And you can see I've made my while loop while swaps does not equal 0. But that means before we go into the while loop, I've had to make it 1. Now if we think about this, a do while loop would have been better for this. so it passes through it once. So now is your challenge. You're going to have to create your own bubble sort. Now you would need to do this on Trinket, and I've given you some pseudocode to help you. Have a look at this bubble sort. It's a little bit different than the ones that you have created. That's because it's using a for loop. The for loop, rather than the while, means it's going to loop a certain number of times. Now so far we said we don't know how many passes there are going to be. But actually we could do a pass for each of the different numbers. So there are 6 items in our list. Well, if we did 5 passes, then it would be definitely correct, because the 8 would have moved, if 8 was the largest number, it would have moved right to the left hand side. Is this more efficient or less efficient than your solution? Finally, I want you to complete the Hack Bubble Sort challenges. You should finish the first 3 challenges and then try the extensions.